With crossover models now accounting for over 30% of the premium compact hatchback market, it's important for aspiring brands like DS to offer buyers something targeted towards this segment. This Ds4 Crossback aims to meet this need, with its higher ride height and SUV styling cues. It's targeted at Surbiton rather than the Serengeti, but it could still be all the car you actually need.
Qashqai-style crossovers now fill our roads. Family hatchbacks with a touch of the Outback about them. But is it really necessary for a car maker to design a product from scratch in order to compete in this growing market niche? Well, the French DS brand reckons not, bringing us this car, the Ds4 Crossback. If the ordinary Ds4 model didn't exist, you might see this as a very credible kind of compact crossover. As it is, we know that this is a Ds4 in a pair of hiking boots, although unlike some supposedly proper Qashqai class models, it does at least have an effective traction aid to help in slippery winter conditions. From the DS Marque's perspective, there's everything here that you need in a compact Qashqai class crossover, and nothing that you don't. And the everything you need bit includes class-leadingly efficient Puretech petrol and Blue HDI diesel engines. Plus, this crossback variant gets all the improvements lately added to the standard Ds4 model, including a redesigned 7-inch infotainment touchscreen that incorporates the latest Apple CarPlay and MirrorLink media connectivity. So, what are we left with? An intriguing package? Well, if you think so, stay with me as we put this car to the test. So, what is it like? Well, you might wonder. After all, the engines and the underpinnings of this model are borrowed from a car never intended to prioritise driving enjoyment, Citroën C4. Yet that's exactly what the DS people reckon is going to be served up here. A claim endorsed by the focused, sporty cockpit with its supportive wraparound seats. First impressions depend a little on the variant you've chosen. This crossback version sits 30mm higher than its standard counterpart, giving you more of an elevated view that can be embellished by a touch we really like. This standard panoramic windscreen with individual sliding sunblinds that, when pushed back, give you a 45-degree field of vision. That's brilliant when, say, you're parked right underneath a traffic light waiting for it to change. Right from the beginning then, you've got the idea. Things are going to be a little different from the norm. And one of our issues with the original version of this car was that its damping was a little over firm, and it still is with the standard Ds4 model. This crossback version, though, certainly benefits from its added suspension travel, although it still makes you very aware of the imperfections of our country's terrible tarmac. Somehow, though, this seems easier to forgive now that the Citroën branding has been removed from this car. It's supposed to be sporty, and to be frank, the ride really isn't any worse than you'd find on the kind of cars that potential buyers will be cross-shopping this one against, models like Alfa Romeo's Giulietta, or maybe a Seat Leon FR. It's all a world away from a Citroën C4, a further differentiating point lying with the substitution of that model's electric steering system for a supposedly more feelsome electro-hydraulic package here. The setup's a touch heavy at low speeds, but, as promised, gives you good feedback if you're minded to throw this car around, and you just might be. True, this car would benefit from the more modern EMP2 platform of its Peugeot 308 cousin, but even with the older, less rigid PF2 chassis that soldiers on here, body roll is well controlled and the car feels taut and quite responsive. Complementing that is a terrific 6-speed manual gearbox that allows you to snap up and down the ratios as if you were Sebastian Loeb in a round of the World Rally Championship. It just all goes to show how basically the same mechanical package can be tailored radically differently to suit different products. And under the bonnet, well, the most popular Ds4 engine choice will undoubtedly be the one we're trying here, with a 120 brake horsepower 1.6 litre Blue HDI diesel unit. It's a decently refined power plant, and thanks to 300 newton meters of torque, it's also acceptably rapid, more so in fact than the 11.2 rest to 62 miles per hour time might suggest. Top speed's 120 miles an hour, and there's the option of an EAT6 auto gearbox that performs its self-shifting duties considerably more smoothly than the old Citroën model's jerky EGS unit. Don't automatically tick the box for this diesel though, without considering the more affordable petrol alternative, a clever 3-cylinder 1.2 litre Puretech engine. With 130 brake horsepower on tap, this makes 62 miles an hour in 9.9 seconds en route to 123 miles an hour, to the accompaniment of an agreeably urgent thrum. At the top of the range, there's an automatic-only Blue HDI diesel with 180 brake horsepower and 400 newton meters of torque, enough to reach 62 miles an hour in 8.6 seconds en route to 127 miles an hour. There's no option of four-wheel drive to give this Crossback version the off-road capability partly promised by its looks, but like all DS4s, this variant does get an intelligent traction control system that optimises anti-skid control on surfaces with little grip. This also improves start-up performance, particularly on muddy or snow-covered surfaces. You'll certainly be glad of it in the next cold winter snap. We've had four-door coupes when this DS4 was originally launched in 2011. Its designers decided it was about time we had a five-door one. Stylists of rival models like Seat's Leon and particularly Alfa Romeo's Giulietta will claim that this concept is nothing new, but cars like those aren't quite as extreme as this one. The swept-back roofline is more distinctly sporty, yet at the same time your eyes are drawn to the other influences here. The sculpted wheel arches characteristic of a crossover or a small SUV, and the premium hatch feel of the chrome-finished waistline and the dark-tinted windows. This Crossback version sits 30mm higher than its standard model counterpart, but you'll otherwise find the other alterations really rather difficult to spot. Brownie points for you if you clock this more adventurous variant's silver roof rails and its gloss black finishing for the wheels, the front fog lamps and the front bumper trim. Both DS4 models adopt brand-specific styling at the front, where the vertical grille now proudly incorporates the DS Wings brand logo and extends smoothly into headlights that feature LED Vision Xenon technology on plusher variants like this one. Designed to resemble jewels, these lamps incorporate scrolling indicators and deliver a unique lighting signature that the brand plans to extend right across its future model range. There are also LED daytime running lights, and top variants like this one have these LED front fog lamps too that turn with the bends. As a result, in all, there can be no fewer than 84 LEDs at the front of this car. In profile, the whole five-door coupe thing makes more sense, with a swept-back rear roof section that encases the back door handles in these extended frames. It's all certainly very different from the conservatively boxy Citroën C4 hatchback upon which this design is based. A car which is 60mm shorter and 40mm taller and manufactured in the same French Mulhouse factory. So, the same people screwed the two products together, but apparently with a bit more love in the DS4's case to reflect the extra care and precision that the DS brand is supposed to require. We're not quite sure what that says about the way a C4 is built, but there's no doubt that this car has the feel of a premium product with lovely design touches like the kink at the bottom of the doors that draw the eye toward the muscular rear haunches. At the rear, the roof-mounted spoiler will be finished in bespoke paintwork if you opted for one of the contrast packs that colour not only this item but also the roof itself in either black, purple, orange, or if you're especially extrovert, vibrant blue. These shades contrasting with a standard metallic, or as in this case, pearlescent chosen paint finish. There's certainly a lot going on here. These stylised bumper cutouts at each corner, for example, and this chrome-finished lower diffuser with its twin tailpipes. The finishing touches are nice too, the neat bee-sting roof aerial and the matte black rear wiper. And on this Crossback model, the lettering that runs between these smeared back tail lights. Time to take a seat up front, where perhaps the most distinctive feature is this panoramic windscreen. Now push back these roof panels and you're given an almost unique 45-degree view upwards. If you don't like this arrangement, or if the day is especially hot and you don't want to fry your forehead, then simply pull the visors back down. Now, the only slight downside with this arrangement lies with the fact that because of the rearward travel that these panels need, it's not possible to fit either a sunroof or the kind of panoramic glass top that's now in vogue in this segment. We like them retracted fully upwards though, creating, as this does, a really airy feel up front here, accentuated by the slightly raised driving position. Once comfortable in front of the curvy fascia, ensconced in these figure-hugging seats, you grip a smart, chrome-trimmed, leather-stitched, four-spoke, multifunction steering wheel. And through it, you view a three-instrument binnacle that fuses analogue and digital displays, and a layout that looks nice, although it isn't always instantly easy to read. Sticking with the individualistic theme, you can change both the background colour of the instruments and the style of the readouts to suit your personal preference. The central speedo dial doubles as an information centre, offering speed, trip computer, audio and compass settings. Anything this can't tell you will probably be covered on the central fascia infotainment screen, this feature redesigned to suit this model's more exalted DS brand status. It's a 7-inch touch-sensitive display with standard navigation, plus the usual audio, Bluetooth phone and trip computer options. As with the instruments, you can personalise the display colour scheme too. There's a choice, Rubis or Sapphire. And there's also two features we haven't seen before on this type of display, a calculator and a calendar. More importantly, you also get plenty of media connectivity, this being one of the first cars in the segment to offer buyers the Apple CarPlay and MirrorLink systems. These allow you to duplicate the functionality of your smartphone onto this screen. Plus, there's the option of internet browsing and Wi-Fi, so it's really very clever. Perhaps inevitably with any design that tries to be distinctive, there are a few issues. Taller drivers might take issue with the wheel's rather limited adjustment range and with the rather upright pedal placement. The small rear screen means that it's not easy to judge where the rear of the car is, hence the standard rear parking sensors. And though the upper dashboard covering has a quality feel, scratchier plastics are used further down. It's also a bit disappointing that you only get a single cup holder if that's not being used by the removable ashtray, and the glove box is tiny, most of its space being taken up by the fuse box. Other storage cubbies include a small covered box here between the seats, a drawer under the front passenger seat, an open stowage area in front of the gear stick, which has 12-volt USB and aux in points, and, appropriately enough for a French car, door bins that are generous enough to accommodate a bottle of wine. What you'll remember, though, are the lovely touches. We'd pay extra for the lovely quilted watch-strap leather finish that gives the cabin a classier feel than almost anything in the segment. And even if you can't stretch to that, pleasingly distinctive features include these Art Deco finished door pulls, a set of chrome-trimmed vents, and if you've specified any kind of leather trim, a massaging feature for the seats that you'll really appreciate on longer journeys. Time to move rearwards and check out the accommodation provided for backseat folk. Now this is, to be frank, the thing that has so far caused most controversy with this car. And you begin to understand why from the moment you move towards these rather narrow doors whose shape is necessarily compromised by the swept-back coupe roofline. To open them, you have to locate handles concealed in window frames whose trailing edge is acutely sharp. So much so that unless you're very careful, you'll find it routinely connecting either with yourself or with adjacent solid objects. In other words, getting in isn't as easy as it would be in a conventional Focus-sized family hatch. But then, this isn't a conventional Focus-sized family hatch. And if you've forgotten that, then you'll certainly be reminded of the whole 5-door coupe concept that the design of this car is based around once you take a seat inside. There's a dark, rather restricted feel, not helped by limited legroom and the narrow tinted side windows, while the pared back roofline will leave headroom at a premium for taller folk. Plus, there's quite a high central transmission tunnel that'll make the carriage of 3 adults really rather difficult. Better, we think, to consider this car as the Coupe DS is determined it ought to be, making comparisons with something like a Volkswagen Scirocco more valid than those with, say, a Volkswagen Golf. Viewed in that light, yeah, it's all pretty practical back here, and quite okay for 2 adults or 3 children, as long as the journey isn't too long. Indeed, if you're in that frame of mind, you might even be quite happy to forgive the fact that these rear windows don't open. With the darkened glass, that can, as I've suggested, make things feel a little claustrophobic. The fixed window frames are there because these sweeping rear haunches ensure that there's absolutely nowhere downwards for the glass to go. Still, at least that saves 3 kilograms per door. Well, it's best to look on the bright side, isn't it? And out back, well, the boot has a high lip and a relatively narrow opening. Get your stuff inside and you'll find that it's 23 litres smaller than this model's Citroën C4 stablemate, but at 385 litres, it's still slightly larger than the trunk provided in Alfa Romeo's Giulietta, or even in the Volkswagen Golf. Plus, there's much more space than you get in a Ford Focus or a proper coupe like that Scirocco model I just mentioned. There's no more room beneath the floor, but provided you avoid entry-level trim, you do get a ski hatch for longer items. There are also the usual bag hooks and a 12-volt socket and tie-down points, plus a really nice touch. This removable torch that automatically recharges itself. You might need it too on a darkened roadside if you opt not to take up the option of a temporary space-saver spare wheel. And bear in mind that if you go for that optional Denon hi-fi system, the boot-mounted subwoofer will reduce the luggage capacity I just quoted down to 359 litres. If you need more space, then pushing forward the split-folding rear bench will free up a reasonable 1,021 litres. The Ds4 Crossback package is based around taking the standard model in its plushest prestige state of trim and, in return for an extra £1,000 premium, raising its ride height and adding in a package of SUV styling cues, including roof rails and redesigned bumpers. Now that leaves overall pricing sitting broadly in the £22,000 to £27,000 bracket. Crossback buyers get a narrower engine lineup from which to choose, but the 2 mainstream units that most will want are present and correct. A Puretech 130 3-cylinder turbo petrol unit and a Blue HDI 120 1.6-litre diesel. Choose to find the £1,750 premium necessary to get the diesel, and you also get the option of the brand's latest E86 automated transmission, offered for an extra £1,200 over the cost of the manual model. At the top of the range, the Blue HDI 180 model comes only with E86 auto transmission and costs just over £25,000. On to the value proposition of this Ds4 Crossback. For us, the closest car in concept to this, another premium hatch with SUV styling cues, is Volvo's V40 Cross Country model. Now that car costs between £1,000 and £2,000 more than this one, depending on the derivative you're looking at. So from the DS brand's point of view, that is a very good start. Bear in mind, though, that a number of purpose-designed family crossover models, cars like Nissan's Qashqai and Kia's Sportage, will cost you slightly less. DS marketeers counter by reminding us of their objective that this Ds4 Crossback should have the class and quality of similarly sized and powered premium brand crossovers costing considerably more, cars like Mercedes GLA and Audi's Q3. Ultimately, we'd suggest that you try this car for yourself and see which perspective you agree with. If, having considered all of that, you conclude that it is this Ds4 Crossback that you really want, well, then your decision could be clinched by a generous showing by this car on the standard spec sheet. Is that what's been delivered here? Well, let's find out, starting with features that are unique to this Crossback model. A standard gloss black pack sees that finish applied to the door mirrors, to the rear spoiler and the front bumper inserts. And you'll also find it on the 18-inch wheels. There are also aluminium roof rails, black wheel arch protectors, aluminium door sill protectors and premium carpet mats. In addition to all these features, as I said earlier, you get all the elements that will be included with top-spec prestige trim on the ordinary DS4 model. To be specific, that means you get LED vision headlamps with directional xenon modules, LED front fog lamps, power folding mirrors, headlamp washers, a parametric and volumetric alarm, auto headlamps and wipers, dark tinted rear windows and rear parking sensors. Unfortunately though, you have to pay extra for a temporary spare wheel if you want to avoid being stuck with a puncture repair kit. Inside you get part leather upholstery, sports style front seats with adjustable lumbar support, a keyless entry and start system and interior mood lighting, plus a reversing camera. There's also automatic dual zone air conditioning, a leather trimmed multifunction steering wheel, cruise control with a speed limiter, an auto dimming rear view mirror and a really unique feature in this class, a panoramic windscreen which has individual sliding sunblinds that widen your field of vision. We like the little touches too, like the rechargeable torch in the boot and the way that the remote central locking also closes the windows for you. In addition, there is a ski hatch for longer items, a rear armrest and rear seat back pockets. Infotainment is handled by a standard 7-inch touchscreen via which you access a 6-speaker DAB audio system and eMyWay satellite navigation. Media connectivity includes the MirrorLink and Apple CarPlay systems that allow you to duplicate the operation of your phone onto the centre dash touchscreen. And there's Bluetooth hands-free and media streaming, plus USB and aux-in sockets. Our favourite standard feature, though, is the DS Connect box, which really is very clever. It includes the kind of SOS and assistance functionality that we're now reasonably familiar with, which is there to automatically summon the emergency services if the airbags go off. Some of the other Connect box features, though, may be new to you. An included monitoring pack, for example, that gives you a virtual instrument manual and can advise you of forthcoming service appointments and will give you eco-driving tips. Then there's the mapping pack that can be set to email you if your DS4 leaves a given geographical area. Useful if, say, you lend your car to your son or daughter. Also included is a tracking function that'll give the police your vehicle's location if it's stolen. On to options. We'd really want to try to stretch to one of the extra cost leather packs that really complete the interior of this car, all supplied with front seat heating and a massage function. You can get the usual full leather trimming, but it really is worth finding a little extra to get the lovely so-called watch strap leather package for the seat facings, embossed with the DS branding and featuring a distinctively quilted, super soft, semi-aniline finish that all your passengers will notice. And while you're spoiling yourself, you might also want to tick the box for the thumping Denon hi-fi system with its digital amplifier, 4 woofers, 4 tweeters and a boot-mounted subwoofer. More practically, your dealer can add in the usual carriers for bicycles, skis, snowboards and roof boxes, and there are useful touches too, like a universal phone holder that you can mount on the windscreen. Safety-wise, well, the age of this design is illustrated by the lack of the kind of electronic assistance features that you'd find with many rivals. Things like autonomous braking systems, driver fatigue detection features, or lane departure warning setups. You can, though, pay extra for a blind spot monitoring system that, on the move, warns you if you're about to dangerously pull out to overtake. It comes packaged up with front parking sensors. More familiar safety elements provided as standard include twin front, side and curtain airbags, plus the usual electronic assistance for braking, traction and stability to hopefully ensure that you never have to use them. You also get twin rear ISOFIX child seat fastening points and hill start assist to stop you from drifting backwards on uphill junctions. As you might expect in this day and age, all the power plants on offer are turbocharged, feature eco-engine stop and start systems and meet Euro emissions regulations. The result, at least in the case of the Puretech Petrol and the Blue HDI diesel models, is a very class competitive set of running cost figures. Now I'm going to quote these assuming the use of 17-inch wheels. Bear in mind that 18-inch rims, like the ones we're using here, will hit the returns by about 5%. Anyway, let's start with the least expensive Puretech 130 petrol model, which returns 55.4 miles per gallon on the combined cycle and 119 grams per kilometre of CO2. Figures that, until a few years ago, would have been considered perfectly acceptable for a diesel model, and are showing that gets very close to that of the class leaders like Audi's directly comparable A3 Sportback 1.2 TFSI. The DS engineers also seem to have targeted Audi with their Blue HDI diesel engines, The combined cycle 74.3 miles per gallon fuel figure of the 120 brake horsepower variant I'm trying here is identical to that of an A3 1.6 TDI. But while the Ingolstadt model dips just beneath the important 100 grams per kilometre tax threshold, the 120 brake horsepower and 150 brake horsepower Blue HDI Ds4 variants record 100 grams per kilometre exactly. What else might you need to know? Well, there's a fractional fuel consumption penalty for choosing the EAT6 automatic gearbox on this Blue HDI 120 model, or for going for the pokier 150 brake horsepower power plant, which only comes with manual transmission. It's not very significant though. Your returns will take a bit more of a drop though if you choose the top auto-only Blue HDI 180 variant, which manages 64.2 miles per gallon on the combined cycle and 115 grams per kilometre of CO2. Overall, though, we're talking of a set of efficiency stats that, for mainstream models, are right on the pace in this segment, in a way that wasn't the case for this car for most of its life as a Citroën. So, how has this been achieved? Well, with Blue HDI diesel technology, the answer lies in a clever three-step after-treatment system designed to better eliminate the four nasty pollutants that diesel units usually put out, namely unburnt hydrocarbons, carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxides and particulates. The first stage sees the unwanted hydrocarbon and carbon monoxide elements converted into harmless water and carbon dioxide. In the second stage, that nasty nitrogen oxide also gets converted into water via a selective catalytic reduction process using a urea and water mixture called AdBlue, although you will need to get that mixture topped up every 12,500 miles. Finally, in the third step, a particulate emissions filter eliminates virtually all particulates at a stroke. And the result of all this is industry-leading diesel technology that many manufacturers are struggling to copy. What else? Well, to help owners get somewhere near the quoted returns on a regular basis, there's a gear shift indicator, plus you can benefit from a series of eco-driving tips provided by the DS Connect Box's monitoring pack. The trip computer in the instrument binnacle even has an eco readout that tells you how long the eco stop and start system has been functioning for on any given journey. Although, actually, we're not really sure why you'd ever want to know that. Residuals inevitably won't be as strong as they would be with prestige-branded German rivals. Expect between 37 to 40% of your initial purchase price back after the industry-standard 3-year, 60,000-mile ownership period. We think that showing will improve, though, as the DS brand gets more established in the market. The warranty is the usual unremarkable 3-year, 60,000-mile affair. And service intervals vary depending on the engine you choose. With the Blue HDI diesels, they're rather frequent, every 12,500 miles. Go for the petrol units, though, and it's every year or 20,000 miles, whichever comes first. To end, we'll point out that although there's no fuel or CO2 running cost penalty for choosing the Crossback body style, you will pay more in insurance costs for this derivative, which does seem rather unfair. In the Crossback lineup, Puretech 130 model is Group 21E, the Blue HDI 120 is Group 24E, and the Blue HDI 180 variant is Group 30E. DS customers who might perhaps be a touch disappointed that the brand doesn't have a purpose-designed Qashqai class compact crossover in its range may well be satisfied with this Ds4 Crossback model. It looks the part, and in many respects it's classy enough to compete with the smarter German brands. It's no off-roading tool, of course, even if you do maximise the benefits of its intelligent traction control system. But then no car in this class really is. Of more interest to most potential owners will be the opportunities for individualisation, the media connectivity, and the efficient Puretech petrol and Blue HDI diesel engines that can be specified beneath the bonnet. They characterise this car's more pragmatic approach to crossover motoring. If that appeals to you, well, then you might well agree with DS that what we have here is a lifestyle-orientated family hatchback that's worth getting cross about.